Throughout George Lopez, Max was never the actual center of attention. He was never the golden child. He was never the emotional center like Carmen. He was not even anything relatable like Veronica would have been. And he definitely wasn't the long suffering overachiever like George was. What he was chaos. Inappropriate jokes, inappropriate situations, zero filter, terrible in school. He was just a whole different type of case. But in the last stretch of the show, something with Max shifts. You see, in the last season, Max goes to work with George because George wants to teach him a lesson about how hard it is to make money. But what we end up finding out is that Max actually loves working at the factory and basically refuses to go to college. When George basically starts this rumor that the factory is going to shut down so that everybody can react to it, Max has an eye opening moment where he realizes that if he doesn't have options, he's going to be struggling just like everyone in the factory. For the first time on the entire show, Max gets scared straight. He wants to go to college, he wants to be better. But realistically speaking, what if college is not actually his path? I mean, when the show ends, you basically see Max just being able to figure out what his life is going to be and move to Arizona with the family. Today, let's talk about what Max's future would have actually looked like and why his future is actually kind of unexpected. As always, if you guys enjoy the videos, hit the like, show some love. Let's get on with it. So, at the end of the show, like I said, Max wants to go to college, and that shows a lot of growth. But let's be serious here. He never really showed academic growth. He struggled with discipline, maturity, and honestly, school was just never his environment. So, what basically would end up happening is with George now being president, Max wants to go back to school. He enrolls in some classes only to realize that he is not cut out for college. I mean, throughout his whole entire school, he never once succeeded. He always just kind of got by. But now that he clearly understands he has options with George running the company, Max decides to go back to the factory. Here is the thing about Max, it's mainly because he's more hands on. He needs to be moving. He can't just sit in a classroom and read from a book, especially with how dyslexic he is. But he realizes that the factory being the one place where he felt motivated, where he felt appreciated, where he felt happy, because he has made this vocal before, he realizes that that is the place where he wants to be. And suddenly he realizes that he is not dumb. He's just wired differently. So he goes back to the factory, and Angie clearly hates this because to her, this looks like regression. It looks like Max has put in so much work that him going back to a factory just looks like he's given up on all the effort that he's put in throughout the years. George obviously sees this differently as he didn't go to college himself and now he's a success. He's running the company. Angie sees this as Max being stuck and she doesn't want Max to be stuck in a company for 20 plus year just like George. But Max doesn't see this as a failure. For the first time to Max, he actually feels valuable. He feels like this is what he's meant to do with his life. Clock in, do the job, get that respect, and go home. Max loves recognition, and that is the biggest takeaway from all of this. Max would eventually go back to the factory because he loves what the factory makes him feel. And we start seeing a big change in his character because throughout his whole life, his acting out was due to negative attention that he was getting from classmates, teachers, maybe even his parents. But this is where the problem at the factory begins. You see, with your father running the company, you are going to be looked at very closely by everyone else working. So when George sees how hard Max is working, he starts trusting him with a little bit more responsibility, which everybody starts looking at a little bit more closer, as I mentioned, because they feel like they also deserve those opportunities. He may not be academic smart, but he understands people, he understands situations, he understands the floor. So much, in fact, that eventually he becomes supervisor, then assistant manager, and eventually he gets to run the factory as a manager. Obviously, Max is going to start hearing a lot of the things like he obviously only got promoted because his father is president, which obviously is going to affect him the same way that he was affected, except now this time he actually doesn't know how to deal with this because he's never been talked down to, even though he's actually doing the work. This is where the arc would get interesting because instead of acting out, he doubles down. He becomes far more strict than George. He is way harder on himself, but also way harder on everyone else. And it's only because he needs to prove that he belongs. But while doing so, he proves that he is just like George. Now, when it comes to relationships, Max always struggled with women. He was always inappropriate, he was always crossing boundaries, and he always confused attention with affection. While he's grown up, this doesn't really change much. He goes through relationship, and women like his confidence, but they cannot handle his immaturity, which continues to haunt him. So, after many failed attempts, he just basically convinces himself to just pull back and focus on work. Work is easy, work has always been good to him, work has always been there for him, and he just becomes a workman. Now, here's the biggest twist and probably the most ironic part. While growing up, Max clashes with George a lot, only to realize that in adulthood, he is basically mirroring George. It's almost genetically to act the way that he acts. The biggest difference is Max grew up with love, while George was raised with trauma. So while Max becomes factory manager, he might actually be a better leader than George because he is able to sympathize with his workers. He's less bitter, less insecure, and he's a lot more self aware, which, let's be honest, that is real growth. Now, Max was never meant to be the academic success story. He was messy, he was unreliable, he was flawed, he was frustrating. But sometimes the person that looks less promising just needs the right environment. College was not his path, the factory clearly was. And instead of being trapped by it, he chose it. The real question is, did he become a better person than George in the end? You see, sometimes the most overlooked character has the most interesting future. As always, if you enjoy this one, give it a like. If you are new, subscribe. This is what we do here. Stay a while, enjoy the content, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Goodbye.